I'm not able to talk right now. I like you a lot, but this stuff is kind of, or you need to start putting me on the calendar. You need to start putting me on the calendar from now. Start putting me on the calendar. Don't from phone. Now. If I have Yeah, we do this every single time. Oh, here you go. All right.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. How are you
Uh,
today?
yeah, sorry I'm late.
You what? No, it's okay. What, did you just jump off another call?
Yeah, it's been a busy day. It's been a long day. Let me fix my
I
background.
bet. All right. I was gonna do the other two lights, but scratch it. It's daytime, so I got enough natural light. All right, let's go. All right, everyone. All right, everyone. They're out in internet world, in the world of real estate, and my audience. Welcome to the Autism Experience podcast. And if you're a real estate person or want to learn about how to make your money work for you, I got my friend from Save the Chat, Bernadeau here, who is a mortgage broker and is going to talk to us today about some of his journey. And he's also going to teach us about the world of mortgages and capital and how to make our money work for us. So, first question, what do you do to help what do you do to help people professionally? And I'm sure you're familiar with our wonderful colleague who I'm now collaborating with.
Yes, I am. So I am, as you mentioned, a mortgage lender or broker, actually. So I help folks to be able to find financing for their deals, looking to acquire their first rental, their first flip, or their first commercial building. So how do I get them the best terms for their deal, right? Before I was a lender or broker, I was also an investor myself. So I understand exactly how to help folks, not only from the lending perspective, but also from the buying as well, to kind of get the best terms for them, and make that work for the long term.
So I think we can lead off with that, but we'll also ask, firstly, what part of the country do you live in?
So I live in sunny Florida. That's right. I'm in Orlando, the happiest
You're
place on earth.
the hotter than Miami?
Well, not that hot, but it's still hot.
Now, how did you end up in Miami and did you originally move there from elsewhere or were you born there?
Yeah, so my city in Orlando, and originally from Haiti, right? So I'm from Haiti, it's a small island in the Caribbean.
Right
Born
next to the
in
Dominican Republic.
That's right, next to the DR. So grew up there, and I came here when I was 9 years old. Moved to Miami, back in 2000, and then from there you know, grew up here. I moved to Tampa, Florida, and now I'm in Orlando. So it's my home.
All right. Now, were you educated in the Florida school system?
I was, yeah. So I went to middle school, high school here in Florida. Yes, sir.
Where did you end up going to university for your college education?
I went to University of Central Florida, UCF, right here in Orlando, which is why I came
When
here.
their college football team was actually not that great, or
Correct.
when
I
they were
went,
somewhat good?
no, so I was there when they were not that great, and then when I left, they got really good. And then now, it's ups and downs. So,
So it's going to sound like a weird question because I probably shouldn't be asking this, but what the hell? Because you're not supposed to ask it with women, but men, it's a different story. What year did you graduate from high school?
oh man, I graduated high school back in 2008.
Oh, I graduated in 2004, so you're a couple of years behind me
Oh yes, I am. Yeah, in '04, I was a freshman
in
in
high
high
school.
school. Yeah, high school.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So you went to UCF. What did you study there?
So I studied engineering. My major was electrical engineering, and so I wanted to become an engineer, and go work out in the field. And really, that just came from when I was in high school. I love math, and so I figured, hey, if I'm good at math, why not just be an engineer and use all the math that I can and be able to build stuff and be creative with my knowledge. So.
All right. Yeah, no, and that's completely understandable. All right. Who in the world or your life do you want to be helping?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, who do I want to be helping? I'm looking to help folks who were in my shoes. I remember back in college, I was gonna get a degree. I was excited. I got my degree, and I'm like, man, I really I made it. Like I have a job, and I'm successful, and I was struggling, right? I was working, barely making ends meet after my degree in college, right? And so I felt stuck. And so I'm looking to help folks that are in the same kind of boat, that have a passion and are looking to find a way to be able to feed that passion and not be stuck in that 9 to 5, wheel, right? So
And that was one of the reasons, aside from selling services, that I ended up in Save the Chat was because of exactly that reason. Was you know, between jobs, but even, now and back when I was, working other jobs, I had the same issue as you as a college graduate. It's like I'm happy that I got the degree. At the same time, I don't subscribe to the fact that I think the university, that the university degree is so much a scam. I just think in terms of the amount of time they ask us to invest in a college degree, and I've argued this successfully even with my own co-founder, the ROI is not great for these degrees.
I agree. No, I would definitely agree. I think the return on the investment and all the time you spent there, and all the, amount of money that you have in loans is not the best when you are out of college. If you look at what your company is making versus your paycheck, you realize that you as a new grad in the world. you're getting paid, a very, very small amount of their overall profit margin. And so
Oh,
how do you
absolutely.
how do you control your, and again, I'm not against college. I'm not against going to college or getting
None
a
of us
degree,
are against college. And
right? But
for the audience's purpose, let's make that understood because I go back and forth with my co-founder, who's a CTO, our colleague, who's also now who's now a fellow collaborator and is my podcast mentor, Mr. Dan Freidenberg. I'm dropping a name because he and I are launching a big project that we would like you to come attend in a couple weeks,
okay,
which
yeah, and
is
I'll
going
be
to,
there.
I think he mentioned this to you yesterday, correct?
I don't recall, but potentially, yeah, it's possible.
He probably mentioned it under the context that he was collaborating with two other people. One of them was me, and then the other person and him had a difference of vision, but he and I are aligned on the vision. So I'll go more into that a little later on about what it's going to be. But we're launching a product and we're also going to be launching a podcast to companion it, where we're going to tap into the other's network, hopefully book up our calendars, and then sell what we call a partner accountability service. And I'm sure you know what that is, especially
Oh
not
yeah,
just in the real estate realm, but the idea behind this is, you know, if let's say you're a job seeker. Okay, career coaches hold you accountable, but what if you just had an accountability partner? Think about it that way, who just instead of taking more of an involvement in what career coaches do, we're just there to say, what were your goals for the week? Did you exceed them or did you put them to the side or did you forget about them? And what can we do to get you going on, toward that goal?
gotcha. No, I think that's awesome. I think a lot of people need to have that partner to kind of help them because you really can't do it by yourself. So having somebody there to kind of help you and check you and your goals is a big game changer. So I
And
definitely agree.
even with the podcast, Dan and I got introduced by this woman who's on LinkedIn by the full name of Satya, who was an early guest of mine on the first podcast concept. And even, she said, at that time, even anything you can do to have someone hold you accountable. Dan held me pretty accountable for a lot of the work the whole time and even reached out to me at the end of last year, start of the new year, and kind of came up with an interesting pitch where we pitch it as collaboration, but in other words, he sees that I hit a point, where, in the podcast build where not so much the accountability aspect, but, you know, joining forces is needed for the both of us. And we can both not just obviously, making money off this idea isn't a bad thing, but the idea is to build together, a little further and try to hit those numbers, especially on YouTube.
I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I've told Linda about this. So eventually what we're going to do when he and I launch the new show is we're going to probably circle back to you and probably have you come back as a guest.
Okay.
So speaking of helping people and then university, what was your first job out of college?
So my first job out of college, I worked for the Air Force. So I moved out to
You
Oklahoma
enlisted in
City.
the U.S. Air Force?
No, no, close. So I was an engineer for the Air Force. So I was a civil engineer, um, and for them. So I work on base. I was doing certain things for them, but I was never enlisted. But I was working on base, so I got to see everybody in uniform, every morning and so forth. So it was definitely a very interesting experience. Yeah.
Kind of an interesting first way to come out of college and at least get an idea of what the real world is like. I can definitely see that.
Oh yeah, it was definitely yeah, because it's not like I was definitely every morning driving to the gate, getting checked in, and you were on base. It was a whole different environment, a
Did
whole
you end up with the
different.
benefits that, did you end up with the benefits as a civilian, as they would say, like they had, or no, the benefits were probably different?
So I didn't get the benefits that you get fully as enlisted personnel, but I got some good as far as health benefits, and I got my master's degree paid for, right, by the Air Force. So I mean, I got some good benefits, but. I didn't get the 0% down loan that they give you when you enlisted, right?
Oh
So
yeah, you'd have to be
yeah,
enlisted in a soldier. The loan you're talking about,
the
I'm
VA
pretty
loan, yeah,
sure. Yeah, the VA, that's what I was going to
yeah,
say, which is only available to enlisted people. I think I remember this.
correct, that's correct. But overall, it was great. Yeah, it was great. Again, I got my master's paid for. I got good benefits. I got to
Oh,
learn
so where did you
exactly.
go to grad school?
So I did my master's online at Penn State.
Oh, nice. What subject area?
Systems engineering, which just means pretty much think of it as engineering management for engineers, right? Yeah.
Interestingly enough, what was the highest salary you saw doing all this, which probably was where you got started with real estate investing?
So at the time, I would say the highest that I saw at the time, probably looking at just under 100,000, like annual.
Barely 100,000. That
Yeah.
sounds about right. So I'm guessing at that point, something must have happened to you with work where you said to yourself, what can I do to make my money work for you? What was that awakening like? Was it a bill? Was it a bill
Yeah,
you
no,
couldn't cover?
no, it wasn't that. I wish it was that. It was something much more drastic, actually. So, um, when I got the job and I started working, I've always wanted to buy a Camaro when I was in college. That was my dream car, right? So when I got my first job, started working, I'm like, hey, I want to get a nice Camaro so I can, f finally achieve this goal of mine that I have. So I went ahead and I bought this brand new, uh, V8 Camaro. It's like a dark blue stick shift, and I was having a good time driving it to work, driving it home. I'm like, this is the life, right? But again, I was struggling to pay rent, struggling to pay the car note, struggling to pay everything that I had to pay on this, salary at the time was like 60K, right? Um, gross. And so about a year later, I got into a car crash and the car was totaled, right? Um,
You
and I
didn't have
don't,
the money to cover the accident, obviously, and insurance was probably like, no.
well, thankfully, the insurance paid for it and I got the loan paid off, right? But the crash it pretty much kind of like woke me up, right? Because I remember I did have a dream to invest in real estate in college, but I never, went and did anything. I never went and pursued it. I just kept on that same path of get my degree, get a job, and then I'll be good. So I think the crash happened, and I realized, you know what? Maybe there's a better way to go about this, where I can still get a nice car, but not struggle to barely make the note every month on it, right? And so at that point in time, I just got into books, podcasts, meetups, and really just said, hey, I want to find a different avenue, a different path.
So you did kind of like what I did at the beginning, whereas after I had Linda, Linda was okay with me coming to meet you and everyone, at the weekly meetup kind of situation, under the guise of actually learning, which isn't a bad thing, even though the meet is really for us people who are sort of already established in careers that, discuss what's there's a word I'm looking for. Basically, what I'll tell the audience is Bernardo is the co-host with our friend Linda Holtz of a weekly meetup called Save the Chat. Save the Chat is basically for real estate investors to basically meet weekly and potentially discuss in their other markets. I have this project going on that I'm investing in, would you potentially like to do it, which is the crux of the group.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the whole point. And so I went into that same mode of going to similar meetups and conferences and just met people and learned, how do I invest in real estate? And that's how I began to start slowly investing myself after the crash and did a whole new path as well.
See, the funny thing is, I'd always wanted to get into investing myself. I thought about back in 2014 going to one of those house flipping seminars with Than Merrill, if
Mm.
everyone remembers him. And then we end up realizing that he got in a lot of trouble for, you know, basically selling a defective product or whatever it was in form of the seminars. But that occurred to me back in 2014 when I started living on my own for the first time. eventually I'm probably going to want to get myself something to live in. But the idea more for real estate eventually, and what woke me up was beginning to build my podcast in 2020. The idea didn't really take off until 1 year later when Dan and I had met through Satya, and then we did a content posting challenge together with a woman by the name of Jenny who lives all the way over in Sweden. And after that, we became close where we just kept an eye on the other's project, and then obviously last year after I had Linda, and then my unemployment phase happened, where I was at the meetup consistently on a weekly basis, kind of opened my eyes toward, what? I want to potentially participate in these deals eventually, but I also realize I need the infrastructure, like sort of what Dan has, where this can be made possible. So maybe if I come to these meetups, I'll sell different services like podcast production, which is stuff that I'm good at, and I made a lot of good, contacts and people I'm going to start following up with, especially in the community to come on as guests. So
Gotcha.
that was kind of, my whole motivation. But after being in the group for quite a while, I can definitely see myself circling back with you to at least look at lending options because what the group opened me up to, not just from a lending perspective, is it actually opened up to me to the fact that there are multiple ways to do this, but I still need an income first. But there might be ways, to just get money lent to me to either finance a deal for myself, my own purchase, or go into, somebody's existing deal. So what does your lending look like so we can understand? Is your lending for residential or commercial deals?
Yeah, so my lending is more so for investment deals, right? So think of it as, if you're buying a property to rent out, like a rental, you're doing a flip, you buying a commercial building to either rehab it or you fixed up. So we do everything from a single family home as a rental to one flip to, commercial building as well. We don't really do as much of, buying primary homes. I can still do them, but I focus more on the investment side of the business,
So
I
if
would
I
say.
wanted to come to you for potentially like a multi-family property, I could, in theory, as a primary, because you still do it on some level, but it's not your forte, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah, if you're gonna buy a quad to a house hack,
Like what? Yeah, like that's exactly what Linda, that's exactly one of the things that I see myself doing. Not just because Linda successfully did it with her husband, but also because I could see a place for it myself.
right, right. And I think, if you're gonna get into this business as investing, the best thing to do is house hack, right? I wish I knew about house hacking when
I
I was younger before I
When
got
did you learn
married.
about house hacking?
I did not learn about house hacking until what, 2019, 2020.
I
And I
think
was
that was
already
about the time I learned about it, but guess who I learned about it through? And what Linda just rebrought the idea in. Spencer Cornelia, who has his own YouTube channel.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Spencer Cornelia, interestingly enough, ended up in YouTube after being a sports management major, but he found that there was little return working in that industry and ended up realizing, like myself and others with YouTube, there's a good infrastructure on YouTube to be starting something for yourself.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, I mean, I think, I found out about it, but I was already like married, and already had a house that we lived in. So it was too late for me. But I think if you're gonna house hack to start, it's really a good way to kind of
Well,
get
you
into the
probably
business.
still could house hack, or you could buy yourself, a multifamily rental property if those are still available down in your market.
Well,
But
yeah, that's the
I do know your market has also caught up to New York just in terms of expense.
correct. Yeah, over here in Orlando, it's a hot market. So what you saw back in 2019, 2018, you're not seeing, today. It's a lot
Oh
more
no,
to
Miami
buy
got
anything.
worse.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So.
So yeah. All right. Uh let's see. What teach us about the different types of mortgages that you sell since you mainly work with residential.
Yeah, so I would say a couple ones that are popular right now is DSCR loans, which stands for debt service coverage ratio loans. Essentially, it's a loan where we qualify the property and not the borrower per se, right? So we're looking at the property's cash flow to see if it can meet the debt. And so if the property is able to meet the debt, we're gonna lend to you based on that. Whereas a regular bank loan is gonna look at your, credit or your taxes and your W-2. On a DSCR loan, we're mainly focused on the property, the market, the rent amount, and does that cover the actual loan amount? The other one is a hard money loan. So if you're buying a house to flip, you need some money to buy the property and renovate it. We can fund the purchase plus the rehab of that property for you and give you 6 months or 12 months to get the work done. And then on the back end, do a refinance into a regular long-term loan as well. So those are the main are the two right now that are pretty popular with people currently.
Now, if you do residential, what are the different loan types in residential that you've seen?
So for residential, you have DSCR loans, you have bridge loans. Um, Obviously, if you're doing a regular purchase, you have FHA, you have conventional loans as well for primary homes. Um, and also like regular like non-bank loans as well that are 30-year fixed loans that you can get that are like 5-year arms, 7-year arms. And so it varies based on the actual lender. But for the most part, for like a regular loan, for a rental, expect a 30-year term, prepayment of
No
five
50s
years.
yet, since the government was talking about introducing a
I
50.
think I've seen a 40-year arm amortization loan, but I would not recommend that for
No.
borrowers. Yeah.
And honestly, I even just, eventually, because I'm deciding what to buy up here, my state has a lot of interesting additional options. Like they have down payment assistance programs that you can apply for in addition to the mortgage. So you don't have to, necessarily save the money yourself. But I also know because it's a loan, unfortunately, it's got to be paid back.
Right. Yeah.
But unfortunately, not everyone in, in our generation will always have the circumstances where they can save, and it's difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. It's a whole different world right now. So I think the way that the world is shifting, we have to adapt to it and not get left
I that
behind.
you know,
So,
it's funny because I've told my mother this before. I would love to get one of those traditional bank loans and I have the credit for it. But
mm,
unfortunate reality is if I barely have the money, not necessarily right now, but I don't have the right type of a job, it's almost better to just, if I want to buy for myself, even residential, I'm like, I might as well just go look into down payment assistance programs because, to cover the down payment. Is it going to suck having to pay back the down payment assistance with a traditional mortgage? Yes. And
yeah, and
I,
and those exist. I mean, yeah, I think if you're a new borrower, new buyer rather, and then most places have those programs available to you based on your income. So,
yeah.
and they can fund the whole thing for you, right? So I think definitely explore that option as
Yeah,
a
no,
first time
that's what I'm
buyer.
going to do because there is a multifamily that I'm keeping an eye on up in my market, but I also have, but it's available only, it's only available through mortgage through the housing organization that helped me find my affordable apartment. So it's considered affordable for a multifamily, but it would have to be residential.
Okay.
But I also just got in contact with two real estate people through LinkedIn within the last month. And the agent out here in Westchester showed me a list of 20 different multifamily units for house hacking. So we agreed, even though I may not have your situation where I'm married, that house hacking would probably be the smartest way for me to have something of my
Agreed.
own.
Agreed. Yep.
And it can also act as a potential secondary business. I mean, I could just buy one property personally for myself as a multifamily, but I'd rather use it use it as a hybrid, basically personal and then rent out the other unit. I mean, they even have triplexes
Right.
in
And you can
my
also
area.
do a quad. I mean, yeah, it's a way to live for free. I mean, if you're able to live in one unit and the other unit pays for your expenses, your mortgage, and have live pretty much with no payments, it's a win for you, right? So I think, buying a quad, a triplex as a primary, and house hacking is really very, very, very important to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't do a 50 though. My mom and I agreed on one thing. It's either going to be a 15 or a 30. Most likely it's going to be a 30. Not just because I also just turned 40 myself this year, but honestly, a 50 year, I think most people realize the 50 year is really for the bank, not us.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's not. And I'm a lender saying this, right? So,
Oh, you're
so
going to get
yeah,
in trouble for saying it
I
on
would
my
say,
podcast.
yeah, stick. And honestly, you know what? I did a refinance on my home, I think back in 2020, and I actually did a 20-year term, right? And so even if you go in the middle at 20 years, um, it's much better than doing like, 40, 50 years it's not good for you, right?
No, it's not because it's like when are you going to pay the thing off?
Yeah, when you're dead, right?
No, because then the bank wins
Exactly my point. Exactly my
or the
point.
lender wins.
Oh,
And my state, honestly, if you especially are paying attention to the news and New York City, we're getting a lot of attention and not for good reasons. Oh God, it's a hard time to definitely run a business, but it's also probably rougher to be a landlord.
Oh yeah, I would imagine up there for sure.
All right, how do people find you besides LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook. So if you go on Instagram, my handle is Bernardo underscores lens underscore money. All right. So if you search that, you'll find me on Instagram. My name is on Facebook as well. So I'm very active there. I post different videos to be able to kind of teach people how to learn about financing and how to
I
find,
haven't been on Facebook in forever.
oh, really?
I like
Yep.
I miss Facebook, but unfortunately, not 2024, but the previous two election cycles ruined a fair amount of my friendships because of
Ah,
the elections in 16 and 20. Then both my profiles got hacked. So it's just like, there's other platforms. I miss Facebook, but I realize coming on LinkedIn, it's a better platform in other ways.
gotcha. So are you mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram? Is that like your
Yes,
two?
for
Okay.
for people in your audience, if they want to find me, you can find me on YouTube, which is Pick Your Brains with Benjamin 761. You can find me on Instagram, which is BV99001. And you pretty much just put Benjamin Vabner into the LinkedIn search bar and you'll find me. Or pretty much how everybody else in the whatchamacallit found me. Let's be honest, we all met through Dan.
Right. That's what I say. Dan knows everybody. He's the internet. He knows everybody.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I started making a joke earlier in the week on LinkedIn about our collaboration. I'm like, would you like to potentially attend something with that Canadian YouTuber
You're
or that guy from the internet and that autistic podcaster?
That's funny.
I know, but it also shows you and everyone in your audience how much respect and of a real friend he's actually become. He's
Oh yeah.
quirky. That's who I model my podcast host, after personality, but genuinely he cares for all of us in a way.
He does. He does for sure.
And he's also very straightforward about most things and also mum when he doesn't want to talk about certain things,
Yeah.
but I think that's all of us.
Agreed. Yep.
Now, what originally got you into lending? Uh, since you said you started out as a real estate investor, what got you into
Yeah.
lending?
Yeah. It's a good question. So I got into lending because I realized that, there was a space where when you talk to a lender, oftentimes they're not really looking at you from the investment perspective or the investor. They really just care about their bottom line, right? And you getting the loan so that way they get their commissions. And so I mean, I've had lenders kind of tell me certain things about deals, and then at closing or before the closing, they would just change the terms on me. Like, hey, I know we said this, but we really can't do this one. So here's some new terms for you. It'll be more expensive, right? So I wanted to get into the space and really be more transparent and really help folks say, hey, you know what? I have your deal. I can fund it. But I don't think it would be a good deal for you to do based on X, Y, and Z, right? So I'm helping them not only as a lender and giving you terms, but also seeing from the buying perspective, does this deal make sense for you as an investor, right? Have you looked at these things as well and not just the rate and certain things, right? And so trying to bring not only the lending aspect, but also the investment being safe and sound for you as a client and serving you as a client versus my bottom line being the first thing that I care about. So,
That makes sense. And to become a lender, because Dan and I discussed this during
mhm.
our during our weekly Zooms as a possibility for myself. Did you have to take an exam to become a lender, to become
So,
licensed?
so to be a commercial broker, um, you do not have to have a license in most states, right?
It might be different just up in New York because New York has all kinds of annoying rules and
Correct.
regulations, and I should know because I tried to take the life and health licensing exams and I failed those two times.
Gotcha.
I couldn't pass the Primerica class final exam back in 2019, but I learned a lot with life insurance, don't get me wrong. But if you ask me, would I try to do it again now? I would consider it in the right circumstances. But what it is I need the time. And the problem with the life and health, which I'm sure it's different for mortgage, and I'll let you explain mortgage in a moment, is life and health. Understanding life insurance was a nightmare.
Hmm.
What has cash value, what doesn't have cash value, and then trying to understand how you can operate with doing this in New York State.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, so to be a commercial, broker, yeah, in most states you don't need a license, but in some states, maybe I think also New York is one of them, you need a license. And then if you want to be a lender that can fund like regular home buying like a primary home, then you need a license, for that as well. But I mainly do commercial and investments, so I don't need a license on my end to function.
Oh, okay. So you can and then TCH Funding Group. Were you working for a lender before you started this, or was this always your thing?
Yeah, so I was not, it's the question. So I just jumped in feet first. So I was not with a lender before. And so I pretty much learned the business in real time, right? So as I went live, I learned how to do, certain things. I got my, connections in place. And so I did this, as I went real time. I launched, got my clients, got my connections, and I just kept going that way. So I like to learn hands-on. I'm very like jump in and figure it out kind of guy. And so that's what I did.
I got a funny story about that because the podcast is a perfect example of that. My co-founder, who's in his still semi-early 40s, he's got 5 college degrees. Love the guy to death. But the one thing I can note with him is he's more I'd rather be taking classes toward understanding models and everything versus trying to learn on the go. Like what you and I are sort of doing to an extent. And while I don't blame him, unfortunately, you're taking a lot of risk to go for a degree. Why not just go why not pause that, do what you and I are doing, which is learning on the go, which is the best way to do something. There's risk, but guess what? At the end of the day, you can still go back to school and, retake all that stuff, but then you have experience.
Yeah, and I think we're moving into a world where experience is going to mean a lot more than having a degree, right? And so,
Funny because
um,
he's still stuck on the big shiny on the bit on what I call within our generation, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. Somebody said it to me, and I agreed with them. Big shiny object syndrome.
yeah, That's not good. Yeah.
He and I have been in several arguments about this, and he said, there are some courses you could take continuing ed on podcasting. I'm like, no. This is something I need to learn directly from people who are doing it. Why would I go listen to some schlub professor who probably has been a podcast host that got selected to be a podcast host that didn't actually build their own podcast?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And also
And
most
what does the
most
class, and he even said to me one day, and this is interesting, but what if a client wants you to have a verified degree? I'm like, clients don't give a shit about that. This is what a
no.
client cares about. Can you can you create a podcast for me, even if it's not top rated, which I don't have a top rated podcast at all as I've been doing this. I haven't been doing this, exactly full time because of other reasons, but I know what works and what doesn't, so I could mentor people on this
Right.
just
Yeah,
from
no, I think
experimenting with content. The thing
right.
is, you can't go take college classes when it comes to making a podcast or creating content. You have to learn as you go with content. That's what content is at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Not just content. I think that's true in everything. Everything that you do, by you going in and jumping in and doing it first. One is you get feedback from doing that, and you adapt and learn and improve every day. Whereas if you just have the book knowledge, it's not the same, right? Because even in real estate, I've learned a lot in books. I've read books. I've a lot of books that I've read, but there are things that I've learned by doing it that I could never get from a book, right? I have to go out and do it myself and actually learn and get that feedback and fail and get up again and try again. And so I think we're moving to a world where people are going to value more experience, execution over having a piece of paper and a degree. And so,
That's the thing I think he's having a very hard time accepting because I ran a scenario through ChatGPT about him today, and it's nothing at all against him. He's a mentor to me.
are you guys
He
friends?
Oh yeah, big
Okay,
time.
okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, he knows I criticize him on things
Okay.
if he ever comes across this, but basically book knowledge, play it safe in a classroom knowledge versus real world experience. I
Yeah.
can say to somebody who probably took a college course, did they teach you about what happens when you're not gaining views that maybe you need to rewire your content?
Yep. Yep.
And I know from posting on LinkedIn what works and what doesn't work. I don't need someone in a college classroom trying to teach me like I'm 2 years old how to create a podcast. I did that myself, you know.
Right.
And it's funny, especially in this. I'm networking with somebody who I just sent an application to. They filled their administrative role. He's a he's a broker in New York City. He's a registered broker, property management contractor in New York City. And he and I have been talking. He actually said to me, when I'm ready and I have an idea of the podcast concept, I'm going to circle back to you so you can help me create a podcast and even
Wow.
host it. And on the one area he's not great in, my friend, which is which is a good thing for this example, is networking. He wants to be the total package when he's networking, which is with a complete degree, even though most people would rather you go networking like I'm doing, where,
Yeah.
I'm coming to you guys and learning about deals while I have no money.
Correct. Yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Yeah.
But anyway, so I think the last thing we're going to cover today for my last question is how do people reach out to you since TCH funding is now your business?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook again. So if you go on Facebook, you can type in my name or TCH Funding Group. Also, if you're on Instagram, it's Bernardo underscore lens underscore money. Find me on there. Yeah, just give me a shout if I can help. With
And
either.
also, where do people find you, especially if they're going to be a new potential real estate investor and they want to educate themselves, which is one of the most important things to do in this. And I'm sure you would agree with me.
Yeah, no, if you look into get education on that, again, I'm posting content every week, every day. So if you're on Instagram and Facebook, you will see my videos. Also, TikTok is new as well. I'm also posting there. So find me there. I'll share information. I'm sharing what I've learned so far in my journey, how I can help you guys in your deals. And so I'm very active online for you
So
all.
since you and I have, a very decently good relationship, I probably, once I figure out what I want to buy from a multifamily or even potentially a condo, I will be reaching out to you and booking, at least booking a consultation with you so we can go over options. But I'm
Gotcha.
first deciding what I want to either invest or purchase for personally. So we'll stay in contact and thank you for coming by today.
Of course. Happy to be here. Have a good
All
one.
right. All right, guys. Thank you for coming by, and we'll see you at the next one.